ministry called the Malawi.
Thanks, Pete.
He has been traveling for a number of years now in Malawi, working with the people there, teaching them sustainable beekeeping to provide them with a way to alleviate some of the poverty. Malawi, I will tell you, is one of the maybe the poorest country in the world.
Sure, thanks, Chris. First of all, I'd like to thank Chris because I think he was very much instrumental in putting together this two-day meeting. It's the first time I ever noticed that they had one in New Jersey. And I think it's really kind of a jam-packed program. Unfortunately, I'm the last guy up. So try to pay attention, try to hear what I'm going to talk about. Yeah, the apiarist report I'm going to bypass because that could be kind of boring at this stage of the day. But I'm going to just give you some information about our family's trip to Malawi, Africa back in August and early September of this past year. Here's my wife Patty, who's with me. She's sitting right up there with her arm raised. My wife Patty and my son Ben and I, we went to Malawi, Africa. I've been, as Chris said, involved with an organization called Villages in Partnership, and they work in several areas over in Malawi, Africa. The area I'm involved with is in food sustainability, and I teach beekeeping, and some of you may know my background is in animal husbandry, and I help them with animal husbandry projects as well. This is the country of Malawi. It's in southeastern Africa, west of Madagascar, wrapped around by Mozambique. And as Chris said, well, it's one of the fourth poorest countries in the world. We fly about 14 hours to Johannesburg, and then we get off there and transfer to a flight up to Blantyre. Once we get into Blantyre, that's about 2 hours away from Johannesburg. Then we travel by road about an hour to a place called Namazi farm. Villages in Partnership, these are their areas of work that they're involved with in 25 specific villages only in the country of Malawi. Clean water is a big issue there. If your water is not clean and you're drinking it and you're feeling sick, you're not going to work very hard, okay? Food security, education, medical care, they send medical teams over, infrastructure such as bridges. There's some Engineers Without Borders teams that come over there and work on helping the local people to build bridges and things like that over waterways, as well as economic development. So it is one of the fourth poorest in the country, or world, in the countries in the world. 50% of the children don't have those basic things right there. 50% of the children. 2 sets of clothes, 1 pair of shoes, a blanket. Many of these children are orphans because their parents died of HIV. Okay, contracted because of poor sanitation, needles being reused, for vaccines and things like that. Okay, malaria is a huge problem. While we were there this time, some of my friends over there, I mean, it's not uncommon to get word that your cousin or your brother-in-law just got sick and died. And boom, everything stopped and they go and they take care of that. Because there's no embalming, there's none of that kind of stuff. So funerals happen quickly and all your plans change because of that. Death is very common over there, healthcare is minimal. We work with a staff of nationals that are involved with Villages in Partnership over there, and part of what Patty, Ben, and I went was to encourage the staff and to help some of these people in some of the areas I just talked to you about, check on some of our livestock projects that we've been involved with. I've been going over there since March of 2013, and I've been there 4 times. This was Patty's second trip, and this was Ben's first trip. And for those of you that don't know, my son is an 18-year-old, just graduated from high school in the United States of America. And it was an eye-opening experience for him. Patty was visiting the most vulnerable people in our villages, some of them, to try to encourage them over there. And she's going to talk about that in just a minute when we get there. Ben was involved with this young man named Sidney, who was an orphan at about age 12. And when you reach a certain age in Malawi, it's kind of a rite of passage for a male to build his own house. So he was involved with building a house on some land there, not far from his extended family that helped raise him. And Ben was involved with helping him. I was involved with teaching a beekeeping class, and this was something that I wasn't really sure how it was going to go, but we moved 10 live top bar hives off of Namazi farm to a village about 20 kilometers away at night on roads that are less than, I mean, you would complain about a road in America, and these roads are nothing like them, right? So I wasn't really sure how that was going to go, because these are African races of bees that can be a little more difficult to deal with, and we had to load them on a truck and drive them over roads that were very bumpy, to say the least. So here we are. We arrived at Namazi farm. The time of year we got there was the dry season. It probably hadn't rained in 3 months, and probably wasn't going to rain for another 3 months until we were long gone from there. So their growing season is roughly half of the year that they have water for growing much stuff. This is me. This is Mr. Malabu? No, Mr. Matulalu.
Yeah.
Matulalu runs Namazi farm. This is my buddy Crispin. I'll tell you more about him. And this is Grace. She's in charge of the rooms there. This is where we stay. It's a little nicer than the average Malawian would stay at. Okay? One of the things I love about Namazi farm is it's right at the base of the Zomba Plateau. And when we look up behind the farm, first thing in the morning when the sun comes up, the sun shines on that plateau. And it's just a very spectacular view there. And it's quite a beautiful place, but it's very poor. This is a perimeter of the farm. It's about 400 or 500 acres. Zomba Plateau is up here. Here's the main base of operations of Namazi farm. And these little patches are villages all around the farm. This is a Namazi school right here. One year, a couple years ago, Dr. Namazi, a veterinarian friend of mine, and I, we walked the perimeter. And that was quite an event. They didn't think I was going to make it, but I surprised them. Because I'm a beekeeper and I don't give up, right? So one of the, if those of you that know me, I always have a biological fluid story, right? Well, most of the people go to the bathroom in pit toilets, and my thighs could never support something like that, right? So at this place, they have flush toilets, which is nice. But when we got there, my son took one look at this. This little piece of plastic used to be a toilet seat. And every time you sat down on it, it would pinch you right where you don't want to be pinched on a regular basis. So after about 2 days of that, I said, enough of this. And we ripped the rest of the toilet seat off, and we just went flesh to porcelain for the rest of the time. So Namazi Farm and Conference Center, they do conferences there. They have demonstrations about beekeeping, goat raising, chickens, fish, blah, 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 all that stuff. We have a very nice orchard that we planted there about 4 or 5 years ago with avocados and papayas and lemons and oranges and things like that. And they were doing very well. Fenced with barbed wire, but monkeys are a huge problem over there. There are not a lot of large animals like elephants at the site of Namazi farm. Actually, there's not any. But monkeys are like birds when it comes to blueberry fields. As soon as the blueberries are ready, the birds come in and pick them before the people get there. And monkeys will spot avocados and spot oranges. So what they did, which was I thought was kind of smart, is they planted lemons around the perimeter of it to act as kind of like a block. So they see the lemon trees, because even the monkeys don't like lemons. But that way they can't see the mangoes and all the other stuff inside the orchard. So that was pretty smart thinking, I thought. This farm supplies seed stock to some of the people out in the villages. And the other cool thing is if you were the beneficiary of some sort of seed stock, the first offspring from that program, you would have to pass on to somebody else. And they make a big deal out of it in a village. The chiefs are there, the sub-chiefs, and most of the village comes out as that pass on takes place. So it's all done in the open and there's no kind of corruption going on behind the scenes. 85% of the people in these cicada villages are subsistence farmers, and that is defined as someone who's poor, not well educated, their family eats what they grow. A lot of times we think it's sexy in America to have a garden and we want to eat what we grow. If most of us ate what we could grow, we'd all be very much more skinnier than I am, right? Because it's not an easy thing to do. These people are dependent on the weather. Growing food is very important, and most of them get at best one crop per year. Okay, third world inconveniences for Americans. This is something that an 18-year-old boy who was raised as a prince in the Schuler kingdom is really not used to. Okay, and power outages. They have a big river called the Schuler River that makes hydroelectricity. But one of their turbines is down. So now the demand is like twice as high as the supply. So what the government will do is they will say, okay, this village is going to get power for a few hours today, and then that village is going to get power, and they kind of rotate it around. It's these roving blackouts, if you will. Okay? Well, my son wasn't really used to that. At night over there, it's pitch black when there's no electricity, and we're living by the flicker of a candlelight, right? So power outages, same food every day. We ate pretty much the same basic food every day, and after a while my son was ready to scream because he didn't really like it. Okay? The roads are poor. If you travel around Malawi for very long, it almost feels like you're beaten with a baseball bat by the time the day is over because you're bouncing around in a truck like this most of the day. The furniture is not very comfortable, especially for somebody with a wide load like I have. Skinny people is probably more comfortable for you there, but not that comfortable for me. Not understanding the common language is a problem because people are talking and you don't know what they're talking about. And it's a slightly awkward, uncomfortable feeling, right? And then you're counting on an interpreter to tell you what they say and for him to, or her to accurately translate what you say. So that's not always the most comfortable things. And we don't really understand the culture, this whole idea of chiefs, and there's a bunch of names. There's sub-chiefs, there's headsmen, there's headswomen, and there's this whole kind of bureaucracy of tribal life, if you will, that is difficult to understand. And plans change. TIA, this is Africa. You may plan something to do tomorrow, but it may all get changed before tomorrow comes because somebody died, or a truck broke down, or the road is closed going here, or something along those lines. So this was an interesting shot because here is a guy taking, this is a crate full of chickens, a homemade crate, on the back of a bicycle. My wife said to me, you know what, when we see a goat tied up on the back of a bicycle, that means doom for that goat, right? And I said, I think so, because they're taking them from into the trading center to try to generate that goat into cash to pay for some kind of bill for their family. So the little goat, the medium-sized goat tied up on the back of the bike going, "Bah!" on the way into town, he's bad for the right reason. This was a Chimpenny church. This is a little place where we went to church on a Sunday while we were there, and afterwards we had a whole bunch of eyeglasses. And eye care is a big deal over there in the dry environment. Corneas can get scratched as people age, like me. I'd be in big trouble without these, because I can't see anything close and anything small. Okay? So, but over there, a lot of these are donated eyeglasses, and the way they figure out if they work is they put them on. It's trial and error method. So it's tedious and time consuming. Okay? But you know what? People find them, and they don't really care what they look like. They don't get them to look cool. They get them so that they can function. Right? So this is my friend Crispin. He lives in a house on Namazi farm. He gets that as part of his salary. His monthly salary is 22,000 kwacha. 22,000 kwacha would be comparable to about $30. That's his monthly salary. Okay. The thing I love about him is he is a guy I met 4 years ago or so, who knew a little bit about bees, but he thinks like a beekeeper now. And that's very encouraging to me because he will try things and he will explain to me what he tried. He'll text me or try to send me an email explaining what he tried, and we kind of go back and forth on that. And I love the fact that he thinks about it. He has a little farm in the village that his family is from, about 30-minute walk from Namazi farm. And every Saturday he goes there and he tends a little garden of about 3 or 4 acres. and produces enough food to greatly supplement his family's income and provide maize, which is corn, which is what they mostly eat, enough maize for them to get through most of the year. He has now gotten enough money so that he's got about 3 of his own beehives, and beehives are a cash money maker in Malawi. Honey can be sold for medicine, for food. Beeswax can be used to make candles, and it very much benefits them to have beehives. This is his family. Before we left, he said, "Tim, would you take a picture of us? And if you can, would you mail it back?" Because he's never had a picture of all his family together in his life. So that was one of the things we did. This was on the front stoop of the house. And I'll tell you, I'm totally amazed. I walk over there to take their picture, and there's not one speck of light over there. And they're inside that house. It's pitch black, but they can see. And I'm telling you, I can't walk outside the front door without falling on my face if I don't have a light. So just very, very resilient people, very appreciative people. This is his farm. There's the Zomba Plateau. It's about a half-hour walk. And another interesting story that I like to tell, or that Patty and I realized the last time we were there, you know, there's trails go everywhere. And there's not one road sign on any of them. So I'm walking over there with Crispin, and I said, "Where do we start walking back? It's getting dark." I said, "Crispin," I said, "where does this go?" He says, "Well, that road goes, or that path goes to Namazi farm." I said, "Well, why don't we go that way?" He says, "Well, because this is a better way to go." I said, "How do you know that, Crispin?" He says, "You just know that." And it really, Patty says, it's just like downtown Cherry Hill, right? Except there's no road signs. But to them, it's like downtown Cherry Hill. In the middle of the night with no light, they can go anywhere they want to go. Crispin and his family. It's pretty cool. This is a little fish pond he has. He grows some fish in there. He also grows some tomatoes and maize, as I said. This is a green that they grow. You see these roots or these stalks here? I said, "What's going on there?" In order to save the seed, he wraps them with like an old feed bag so that the birds don't get the seed or the seed doesn't fall to the ground. Once it dries to a certain point, he cuts them off, they bring them in the house, and then they pull out the seeds in order to save the seeds for the next plant, which I thought was very interesting and cool. This was a lunch. This was one of Patty's lunches. This is called sima. Sima is like, if you ever had polenta, it's like cornmeal mush, almost like a pancake. And they grind the corn. They take the white flour, they cook it until it gets very thick, and it's very sticky. And most of the older people all eat by hand over there, and they would take some sima in their hand, had very little taste, and they would mix some of these greens with it and eat that. And then here's a local chicken leg, and that was her lunch. And Fanta. My wife pretty much lives on Fanta in Malawi. It has warm Fanta at every meal, right?
Right, I love it.
This is a typical kitchen. It's a 3-rock cook stove, and this is where the ladies will do that right down, you know, pretty much on their hands and knees, cooking with smoke, and deforestation is a big issue over there. One of the things that beekeepers have learned over the years is that you have to have trees to make honey, so they are planting trees and they are protecting them and not cutting them down to cook their dinner. Okay? VIP has also instituted some of these rocket stoves that are much more efficient. They use a lot less wood in order to get the same amount of heat out of them. Here's Ben, my son Ben, and this is Sydney, the boy that was an orphan, and he was involved with helping him build his house. And this is another guy named Isaac, who is Mr. Malabu's son. He's actually a college student over there in Malawi now. He's really just a great young man. Both of these guys, Ben did pretty good with. This is Sydney's house, all made out of mud brick. But there's 2 types of bricks over there. The best bricks are the ones that are formed, dried, stacked, and fired. They start a fire under them, and that cooks them. So when they get wet again, they don't turn back to dirt. But Sydney doesn't have the money for that. So Sydney's bricks, if they don't get them protected before the rains come, when the rains hit them, they will turn back to dirt and end up back in the yard. Most of these people all make them. There's a certain time of year that's brick making season, and they make them right in there on their piece of property by hauling water to like a mud pit, loosen it up, put them in the molds, cast them out to dry them, and then use them for masonry. Oops, you're almost up, Patty. You see these poles? This is a scaffolding system. Ben had to go with Sydney to get wood to make the scaffold one day. So I said, well, how'd that go? He says, Dad, we walked for like 3 miles. We found this lady who owned a wood lot. Sydney negotiated with her for the price. She says, okay, you can cut 8 poles. They go out with their own saw or their own hatchet. They cut down 8 poles, strip them off, and they lug them all back there. There's not no Home Depot, right? And Ben says, Dad, I never did anything like that before. You have to harvest your own tree in order to make your own scaffolding, right? And that's pretty much the economy in a subsistence type of setting. Okay, Patty, why don't you come up?
Sure.
And I'll let you talk on this mic.
Okay.
Notice right here. She's going to tell you about that in a minute.
What? Oh yeah. Uno is the universal game of the world. It's made by Mattel. I have played Uno with high school students in the city of Camden who could not speak English. I have played Uno with African villagers who maybe could speak English, maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, it's a good game to always have in your pocketbook. As you can see, how I have a skirt over my legs. Showing your legs as a woman is very provocative. And so culturally, that was one thing that we had to understand. Nobody wears shorts over there. You don't do that. This lady here in the black top, that's Emma. She's a school teacher from a local school, and she's the one I hung around with the whole week. We went village to village visiting folks that were essentially shut-ins. What I did was kind of prepare a little report for Villages in Partnership to show folks who needed to be seen by the next visiting medical team, who needed transportation to the team, who maybe needed food, and just really to say hello. They're so very gracious. They would drag the one chair within 1,000,000 miles and give it to me. Go ahead. There you go. Here I am with two couple in the village, blind. That's it. This might be that's all you got right there. And that's pretty much what they do all day, every day. Here I am with a bunch of, and again, as you can see, I was literally the only white chick within 1,000,000 miles. Every kid, it was so cute. They would always come out to see the person coming to visit. That was a lot of fun.
This lady was their grandmom raising half of these kids, right?
Yes, yes. And we have a lot of grandmoms raising grandchildren because parents have died of HIV. This woman, she was deaf, blind, could not walk, literally spent 24/7 on a concrete floor in desperate need of a wheelchair, which we were going to deal with in our next trip over. She was cared for by her son's family. She was well, but literally that's it. Okay. The other thing I can say is all the clothes that we put into a Goodwill bin, that's where all those clothes are. Because I saw kids with an Old Navy t-shirt. There's not an Old Navy within 1,000,000 miles.
And I'll add a little bit to that because clothes that are the size that would fit me don't go there. They go somewhere else. Because the last time Patty went, our luggage didn't come for 5 days after we got there. And I wore the same clothes for 5 days. And my friend Joe, who you're probably going to see in a little while, he searched high and low to try to find something to fit me. Not happening over there. Okay, this is a clinic that Villages in Partnership runs for pregnant women once a week, and or people that just had babies. There's medics there. They do measurements, they provide vitamins, they help the ladies as they're getting ready to have babies, and then they monitor the growth of the babies once they're born. Because a big problem over there is young children not getting enough protein in their diet. And that's a huge problem. So here, for 2 days, we had about 45 beekeepers involved in a beekeeper training, and 6 different villages were represented here. And here's another shot of it. This is a better shot, really. These folks, this was one of the lead instructors. He's a friend of mine, and he's been keeping bees over there for many years. He's like an extension agent for the southern part of Malawi. As part of this training, each village got a smoker and some protective gear, as well as a bee brush, hive tool, and gloves in order to be able to use that in their village project. Over there, the villages, it's not so much individuals keeping bees as it's a village project, and there may be a half a dozen villagers from that village involved in it. Okay? So we're getting ready to move these bees, because the night after the second day of our training, a bunch of villagers from Mpulo were going to come and help us move these 10 top bar hives off of Namazi farm. So my idea was to try to use a cargo net in the back of this truck to lessen the banging as these bees go down these terrible roads, right? So I don't know what they have over there, though. I didn't know if they had a cargo net. But my friends, they have these things. If you look at this, this is actually the rubber from the sidewall of tires. And they have them cut into like 3-foot strips. And they're kind of like homemade third-world bungee cords. And they work extremely well. I'm gonna see if I can show you this video, because these guys are actually no, it's not going to let me do it. But they're pulling, ripping them, stripping them down. Here's the stack right here. And then they're weaving them in and out of the back of this truck. Okay? This is a bee suit made in Malawi. I've been bringing bee suits from Man Lake or some U.S. supplier over there. But actually, these Malawi bee suits, I found a supplier for them, and they're about 1/3 of the cost of a U.S. bee suit. And they're made locally. So I like everything about that, because it really helps the local economy, and it's made by people in Malawi, and it's a lot cheaper than the ones from the U.S. So here they are, continuing to weave back and forth. We did this late in the afternoon. Here are those strips from the sidewalls of tires, and they can cut them down to any size thickness they want. So then the big question was, how do we keep the bees from coming out of the top bar hives? Because they're not right near the truck. They're down a path, down the hill, up in the bush, wires the trees. They wire them the trees, so they sit about this high off the ground with wires, so that ants don't come in, because ants will drive a colony right out of the top bar hive over there. They keep the wires greased so the ants can't get to where the bees are. So we have to go down there in the dark, clip the wires, haul the bees up, put them on the back of the truck, and I didn't really know how they were going to behave. So the big idea was to take mosquito nets that people sleep under, wrap the beehive up in that, cut the wires, haul them out of the bush in the dark, put them on the back of the truck, and load them all up, and drive 20 kilometers away, and unload them and rehang them in the bush when we got there. Okay? I'm a little bit afraid of snakes. And let me tell you, most of the snakes over there, if they bite you, you're going to die. Okay? So, but I figured my odds were pretty good, because there was a ton of people walking all around, and they'd probably get somebody else before it ever got me. That's what kept going through my mind. But it's not a nice thought, but that's kind of just the way I was thinking. So here are the mosquito nets wrapped up in the beehives. They're on the back of the truck, and one after another we haul them up out of the bushes. Okay? Here we are heading down the road. This is the truck with the beehives on it, and I'm in the car behind. Pitch dark.
You had a question, too?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Why did you have to move the hives?
Because we were moving them off of Namazi farm to help another village get started with a beekeeping project. Yeah. So here you can see some of the bees would come out of the net or out of the hive and kind of crawl around. My thought was they'd end up going back in once things got settled down. So the problem was when we got to Mpulo village, I'm looking at some of these hives and the bees are all dead in the net. In the net. So I'm thinking to myself, why would these bees die in the net? Did they starve en route? Couldn't have been that. What was going on? Are they that fragile? I don't believe that for a minute. So then I all of a sudden remember some nets are sprayed with a pyrethroid to kill the mosquito that tries to come in and bite you when you're sleeping at night. So, and then as I looked at it, the old nets that lost all that pyrethroid and spray on them, there wasn't any dead bees in any of them. But the ones that were like a new net, they had the problem. So I was a little bummed out about that. It wasn't a huge amount, but anyway, we hung the hives. They walked right up through the pitch dark path, knew exactly which trees they were going on. They had them already prepared and walked right to them in pitch dark. And it doesn't cease to amaze me. A couple of days later, we checked on them, and all the hives were still in great shape, but some of the field bees that came out and got exposed to the net, they're the ones that had a problem. Okay. The other very interesting thing that I found this time was a guy in the town of Zomba. He's like the Styles apiary or man lake of southern Malawi. And for years we had trouble finding stuff, just finding stuff over there. Finding beehives that were already made, that we didn't have to get them custom made. Finding bottles to put honey in, blah, blah, blah. But this guy's got everything. And here are the beehives that are all ready to go. These are the bottles. You can buy them by the 100 lot. He's got soul protective gear. These are strainers. They're not stainless steel, but they're for straining honey, because most of the time it's the crush and strain method is how they harvest over there. So in any case, that was a big find, and I was very encouraged by that. One of the last days of our trip, we ended up going to a place called Muvu Camp. Muvu means hippo in Chichewa. And this camp is right on the Shari River. It's kind of like a little rest before we head back. At this camp, the other reason I wanted to go is I never knew if my son would get back to Africa again. Patty had been there before, I'd been there once before. But I wanted Ben to see some of the animals that are visible there. This is like a chalet that we stayed in. Some interesting things about this is there's a big double bed in the front, and then there's 2 single beds in the back. You could really sleep 6 people in there if you had to. Nice bathroom. It's first-class accommodations. However, once it gets dark, there's a big sign that says, "Do not leave this structure after dark without an armed guard." Okay? Because in this camp, there's animals just roam right through. So we're literally from here to that back wall from the Shari River. In the Shari River, every 100 feet is a crocodile, and every 100 yards is about a half a dozen hippos. Okay? So it's no joke. All night long, the hippo pod up here is talking to the one down there. They're like calling each other out. I'm a 56-year-old fat guy who wakes up multiple times in the middle of the night. And I wake up one time and I'm laying there trying to fall back to sleep, and what do I hear but crunch, crunch, crunch. Right next to our little chalet, I think a hippo's walking right by there, right? And there's scat all over the place, feces from all different kinds of animals. So very cool, very neat place, but a place where you want to follow the rules and regulations, okay? This was one of the hippos that we could see when we were out on the river safari, and it was overcast and cloudy, so therefore the hippos were out of the water. Normally every other time Patty and I, or the other time Patty and I were there, we only ever saw the hippo's ears and eyes, a shot pretty much like this, okay? The other cool thing was we must have saw almost 100 elephants come down to drink. And that's something that you don't see every day. Early in the morning we had seen one, and the guy had brought us back to the main lodge in the boat. And I don't know where Patty and I went, but next thing we know, we turn around and our son and the guide are going off by themselves, because the elephants came out of the bush across the river, and we're all down there drinking. And he got right up close. They stayed there for quite a while, and a whole bunch of us went back to see it. So Here they are drinking. This was a video of it, but I can't play it on this machine. But it's just kind of cool to be that close to a wild animal that's that beautiful. The other thing I didn't realize is that drinking with their trunk is a learned behavior. They learn it from their parents. And a baby elephant does not know how to drink from its trunk and has to drink from its mouth. So what they do is the parents or the adults will kind of block the crocodiles back from them, and the baby will come in behind them because they have to put their whole head down in the water in order to drink. And you can see the water line on the side of their mouths, so you know that that one is less than a year old, because they really don't get the hang of drinking with their trunk till they're a year old or older. So some of the highlights, my son really struggled with the culture. It wasn't easy for him, but yeah, I think it was good for him, okay, because he got to see how a lot of the rest of the world lives. He got exposed to a culture. He was very personable and worked well. He learned a lot from the young people. Money was an issue, because in Malawi, it's not offensive to ask somebody for money. My son didn't really know how to deal with that, right? Because Sydney seemed to always be asking him for money, and he's a generous kid. He was giving it to him, but after a while he started thinking, man, if one of my friends was doing that, I'd think he was a user. So we kind of helped him understand the kid's not a user, that's just a cultural thing over there, right? He persevered with the inconveniences. The night I was moving bees, we had no electricity at the place we were staying. Patty and Ben were home, Mama and her son sitting there, and he vented on her and told her he couldn't believe how backward this place was, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? He afterwards, my friends were saying, hey Ben, you gonna come back? You going? Oh yeah, I'm gonna come back. Not next year, believe me, but I'm gonna come back in the future. So it was just, I think it was a great experience for him. Patty has a balance issue and has some handicapped issues, and for her to go around and visit some of the people that had really physical hardships, you know, sometimes they think because you live in America, everything's coming up roses all the time, right? And it was an encouragement for them to see her. And then, quite frankly, we had an anniversary dinner where we invited all of the VIP staff to come and have dinner to celebrate. We celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary while we were there. It was kind of cool because they all came, and most of their wives didn't speak a lick of English. And of course, Patty played Uno with them and became their best friend. And then Mr. Malawi, who is the director of Villages in Partnership on the ground over there, he's just a fine man. He got up and gave a speech at the very end. See, the lower people give speeches, and then at the end, the head guy gives the speech. And he gave this big long speech, and when he told us what he said, you know, he says it's not uncommon in Malawi for a man to get rid of a wife that has a handicap issue. And he said, you know what, he said, Mr. and Mrs. Schuler are very, he used Patty's situation as an encouragement in our 30 years of marriage to try to encourage the people that are on his staff to do the right thing when it comes to their commitments and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool that he worked all that into his speech. And so, you know what? How about you? Are you willing to come alongside people less fortunate than you? Get to experience a different culture, see subsistence farming and beekeeping, be brought outside your comfort zone without complaining. Because in 2018, I'm going to plan a trip over there with a beekeeping emphasis. And if you think that might be something that you would be interested in doing, let me know, because we're going to see if there's any interest in doing it. But it's, you know, it's not first-class accommodations. There's, you have water, hot water, sometimes, not all the time. And as I told you, you don't have electricity all the time. But there's a great bunch of people over there that will keep you safe, and you'll see some cool stuff. So, and you'll get to spend the day and the night at the Muvu camp on the Shari River. So you might want to consider that. This is an African proverb. It says, "The one who walks alone by the river gets eaten." It's not that funny, but it's true. Okay, so you don't want to walk by the Shari River. I think about people that have to make their living on that river, and it just blows my mind, because there's so much wildlife there, and that wildlife looks at us as an hors d'oeuvre, you know. So The first time Patty went in the river, in the boat, the guide said, he says, Mrs., he says, would you like a life jacket? And Patty says, no, I'd rather drown before I get eaten, thank you very much. So, you know, that's, you know, it's not funny, but it's what it is. So, that's all I have to tell you. And I thank you for coming tonight.